Compass, another acquisition. And who are they buying this time? I mean, just look at it. It's one after another after another. And antitrust had always been something that at least played into things in the smallest way. But given all that's going on, I can't believe that this happens without any sort of oversight. So Compass has already taken Christie's, and that's fine, consolidation. But in light of what's going on with Zillow and the other issues, it's just, it's a land grab, and I understand they're a roll-up. I get why they're doing what they're doing, but let's just look through what's happening now. So Compass, let me read to you from this is Yahoo Finance. Brokerage giant Compass is set to become the largest residential real estate firm in the world after announcing a deal to acquire a major rival Anywhere for $16 billion. All right, so we mentioned Christie's already, but Anywhere owns Century 21, very retail brand, Coldwell Banker, a bit more broad, and Sotheby's. So from Compass' sake, it makes perfect sense, right? Scale, volume, brand names, and all of this, right? Scale, it's a roll-up, and we'll talk about technically what a roll-up is in a bit. But at a $10 billion valuation, Compass is using Wall Street money and capital to consolidate. How does this benefit consumers? Compass will make all sorts of arguments about, better service, better distribution, and all that. But no, that's a hand fake. And let me position it this way. So Zillow, and there's some real problems with Zillow, and I've talked about in other videos that I'll link to, but real problems with Zillow, for example, where I have a listing, put it up on Zillow, and Zillow sells space so that the agent that shows up on the ad or the posting or when you search is not me. If you want to find me, the actual listing agent with the information, et cetera, you have to look to the small print and track me down. So that's been a problem. Now, Compass and Zillow have been going at each other. There are all sorts of lawsuits, or there is, let's just say, a lawsuit with many facets. And Compass has tried to do what they call private listings and argued that this is better for consumer choice because it gives, the internal brokers time to look at things and work on things. And we're not going to syndicate it out to Zillow. We're going to control things, give you better service. And they've got a three-pronged approach and all of that. It's BS, frankly. It's marketing. And again, from their standpoint, I understand why they do it. And what Zillow has done is wrong. Their business practices are wrong. And Redfin's been acquired by Rocket Mortgage. That's a whole other story. But let's just talk about it for a second. The brokerage houses, typically, the Sotheby's, the Christie's, my brokerage, right? We have our listings, our intellectual capital. The syndication platforms, the Redfins, the Zillows, Realtor.com, all of these, for the most part, Realtor's a little different, but for the most part, they take our listings and we get nothing for it. Now, it doesn't mean they're not paying something to the MLS, but for the agents and the brokers, it's been a real disadvantage, and that's a problem. So Compass and Zillow have been going at each other. Compass is no more right than Zillow is. They're both trying to control the world. But here, this acquisition, not good for consumers. Good for Compass shareholders, perhaps, but not good for consumers. Why do I say that? Well, consolidation inevitably leads to land grab, kind of an oligarchic competition where the large firm sets prices and direction and all of that, and there might be incremental benefit, but in the end, lack of choice hurts. Lack of choice hurts. And that's just a fundamental truth of economics. We can argue about it if you like. I'd be happy to debate it with you, but that's just a fundamental truth. So let's take a step back and look a little bit deeper into the merger. So the press release says the merger will expand reach into every major U.S. city and 120 countries, combined workforce of 340,000 real estate professionals. Compass is already the largest brokerage by sales volume, and Anywhere was the second largest. So if the Justice Department doesn't step in, you're allowing number one and two to combine. That's like saying you're going to let Google and Microsoft combine. Wouldn't happen. Even in this administration, where it's really hands off, it'll be interesting to see how they handle it because it is real estate, which the administration has a particular penchant for, but we'll just have to see. The boutique brokerage, and my brokerage is obviously boutique. Pardon me. What I bring with my team is wholeheartedly different. This is old school private client focus, white glove service, hands on. We have obviously the agent and the brokerage. I'm the broker. We'll bring attorney. We'll bring legal when needed. We'll bring the accounting practice. All the things that a larger brokerage says they do. And in fact, they provide many of the services. But in this case, you actually have one-on-one. It's like having a private banker or a private relationship. Right? That's what you get in my brokerage and boutique brokerage. There aren't that many left. I mean, if you look at the agency does a really big job. And yes, they've been expanding and they're all over the place globally, and as a matter of fact, but it's still a very high-end boutique. And in general, the experience I've had with the agents there, it's really good. Professionals know their markets, good people. In the larger brokerages, it's a question of numbers, right? If I say nothing else, if you've got a larger brokerage, you're going to have more A players and more D players. That's just numbers. But it does dilute the overall brand. It doesn't mean the reach isn't very large, but the brand itself gets diluted. I couldn't be more upset watching this happen, and the talk of, oh, this is a great thing for consumers. This is great for Compass and the consumer. It's not. They're a business, and they should try to make money, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. But the fluff and the hype around it, I've never appreciated their approach to things, but they've grown, and they've grown by acquisition. So a roll-up. What does that mean? Very much like it sounds, it's one company that steamrolls through and buys, merges, whatever it takes with others. So you take an entity, you put capital behind it, money, typically from Wall Street or private investors, and you then step out into your marketplace, into the world, and you say, where can I find a competitor that I can acquire? Now, if you can acquire that competitor and you're more profitable than they are, you're able to buy it at a price less than the multiple on your stock, it's accretive. And without getting into all the technicals, accretive just means that the acquisition itself helps your earnings, so your investors will be happy. So you steamroll through. Typically what happens is the company buys another and they strip out layers of management, whatever it might be. They call it redundancies. It could be technology systems. It could be people. It's often real estate. You don't need two offices in the same locale, these sorts of things. So as you start to roll things up, you can hide an awful lot. Very few actually work over the long term. We'll see whether Compass does or not and how they act in a real downturn, right? People talk of the market turning already, supply and demand coming into balance, interest rates are being cut, so that might help. But this really is what it's all about. Rolling things up and dominating, which isn't necessarily good for consumers. I want to underline that again. It is not necessarily good for consumers, oftentimes not. And the roll-up philosophy it's just brutal. The sellers of the secondary company may be pleased, but the employee, staff, management, and all of that, it's never a good thing. Now, from a capitalistic standpoint, yes, free market, let it happen within the rules. The question here is going to be, what are the rules? How big are they going to be allowed to get? Now, from my standpoint, I welcome it. The larger they get, the easier it is for me to stand out. Right? My service offerings, the way we do things, the private relationship, all of this, it's tighter, it's better, and that will only help me. But industry-wise, doesn't help. Letting the free marketeers go at it, Compass, Zillow, we'll see where we end up. We haven't even talked about yet the the National Association of Realtors settlement from last summer, which changed the way commissions are meant to be paid for. In other words, each side paying their own. So buyer's agent gets paid by the buyer, seller's agent gets paid by the seller. Hasn't really worked out that way, but I mention them because they're our industry trade group that tries to act as a regulator and set rules. And yeah, they've done a lot of it, but inefficient, not a good organization, in my opinion, overall. Necessary, but very inefficient, lots of problems, lots of struggles. I mean, check out what Jason Haber and Mauricio Umansky, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, of the agency. He founded the agency, formed the American Real Estate Association as a potential competitor to NAR. Jason started a petition a few years back now because the executive, I think it was the CEO or the president, I can't recall, was accused of all sorts of malfeasance. And Jason started a petition, and weeks later, the guy was gone. Cheers to Jason Haber out of Manhattan. I also wanted to touch on an article and a thesis that I wrote. I just want to bring it up here. It's an article that I wrote, I guess it's the first time about 2 years back. And it's on I did a podcast about it. It's on my website, which is Native Angelino. The site is 1929.live. That's the actual website, 1929.live. And the podcast is Native Angelino with Tom Levine. I'm transitioning that to YouTube. Article that I'm speaking of is Compass Just Redfin on Steroids. The subtitle is NAR Lawsuits, AI, and the Laws of Free Markets to Shrink Commissions. So I just want to read it to you. Let's put the early retirement of NAR CEO Goldberg aside. Let's put the Sitzer-Burnett verdict aside. Further, let's put the various and other pending lawsuits for the moment and just focus on the impact of technology in the business of real estate. So in this first paragraph, what I'm setting up is the early retirement of the NAR CEO. That's the Jason Haber element. The Sitzer-Burnett verdict was the NAR lawsuit that was lost by NAR and set into practice changes in the business. Now, the technology and the AI piece, still ongoing, major reason behind why Compass is going through acquisition, in acquisition mode. Everybody wants their platform bigger. Let me keep reading. So to argue that AI is not simplifying and streamlining numerous aspects of the production process is foolhardy. To argue that greater transparency and streamlining will not lead to the narrowing of spreads or reduction in fees and commissions is to long for the era of the buggy whip. It's over. The game is changing. And this change will bring significant disruption, displacement of labor, and lower income to many industry professionals and participants and indirect suppliers of services. So that's the thesis here. Right? The world has changed. Commissions are coming down. Right? That is happening. There's argument about it. I'll tell you, my thesis is just like if you trade stocks, if you look back 20 years ago, you were paying 25 cents a share. It's now essentially free. The same thing is happening here. Same drivers, right? Technology. Think Zillow, anything you want. All the power behind it. Layer AI on top of it. So we're moving towards an era where you'll have a menu of services. If you want to pay for the Charles Schwab type service or the E-Trade type service when you're selling your home, great. You can do that, the discount brokerage. If you want at the other end, if you want Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, you can get that. So think about it from the Compass point of view and why it's strategically interesting. The low-end brokerages, they've got Century 21. Okay. At the middle, you've got Compass itself. They'll argue they aren't, but they are. You've got Compass itself, Element, and At the high end, you've got Sotheby's. So, how can you argue with that? I said element. I meant Coldwell Banker. I apologize. Century, 21 at the low end, Compass and Coldwell Banker in the middle, and Sotheby's at the high end, right? Charles Schwab, E-Trade, Robinhood at the low end. In the middle, you've got Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and at the high end, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and some of the private banks. That's where we're heading, a menu of services being driven by technology primarily. So back to my article for a second. I'm going to say it again. It's over. The game has changed. There's disruption, right? We're seeing that. Talked about displacement of labor, and lower incomes are coming. Second thesis, Compass is a classic, albeit well-funded roll-up. We talked earlier about what a roll-up is, but just to reiterate, it's a process used by investors, commonly private equity, but that's changed a bit, where multiple small companies in the same market are acquired and merged together, typically by a larger. Okay, the principal aim of a roll-up is to reduce costs through economy of scale. That's exactly what's going on here. So Compass grew through the acquisition of rivals and is growing through the acquisition of rivals. Like I said, acquisition by buying others, but they've also been on this crazy recruitment effort, forever, offering big deals that typically when they roll off, Compass or the person offering the big deal gets left holding the bag. We can talk about that later, but the simplified version simply is think about this. If I'm an agent somewhere, at a competitor's brokerage house, and I've had a good year or two and I've got a name for myself or done some interesting transactions, a recruiter comes in from the firm and says, hey, you're the man or you're the woman. We love what you're doing. And you know what? We want you to come to us. In order to get you to come, we know we have to pay you. So what are you earning now? You're earning 85% commissions, 90% if you're a broker. We'll give you 100% commission. And we'll give you a marketing budget. We'll do A, B, C, D, and E. Come to us. And in fact, no, you won't come. You need a better offer. Okay, we're going to pay you 120% of commissions for the first couple of years. Come on over. Why wouldn't I do it? Many people say yes. So you move to the new firm. You hang out. You like it there. You don't like it there, but you're getting paid. So as long as you're still doing business, you hang. But at the end of the contract, you look around and go, well, do I like it enough to stay? Or do I go sell myself to another brokerage if I can do that? Or do I stay here because it's been great? Or do I go do something else? Oftentimes, it's to go do something else or they get recruited away. It happens in sales businesses. It doesn't matter if it's stock brokerages or salesmen at Oracle. It's the same thing in real estate. So that's a piece of the roll-up and what gets involved in consolidation and all of this. Now, the question I asked in the headline, it wasn't just clickbait when I said, is Compass just Redfin on steroids? So when this was written, Compass was the mid-tier firm, large to mid-tier, but on the upswing, right? Acquiring and buying talent. And Redfin was the technology platform, let's call it low end, right? But just a technology platform first and foremost, with other services, brokerage and all of that, but really was a tech platform. So when I said, is Compass just Redfin on steroids? What I was saying is, look, Compass has got more dough. They've got a shinier offering. They're investing in technology, which is the big thing they always say, investing in technology, but so is Redfin, right? And Redfin went to Rocket in the end, which is a monster, right? Big mortgage provider, servicer, et cetera. They've got dough for technology. So the argument that Compass is better doesn't hold. It's marginal, if anything. Back in the day, a few years ago, the Compass pitch was, look, we're the best. We got money. We're building it from the ground up. I don't know if it was even true then, but that was the pitch. But now, even playing field. Was Compass just Redfin on steroids? Yes. Think about what the short-term effects of steroids are. Increased muscle mass, leading to improved athletic performance, hopefully. Theoretically improved post-workout recovery. increased red blood cell production, oxygen gets funneled better, increased stamina, all of this. So when you have a firm that's bulking up, they're using cash as steroids to go buy and build everything they can as quickly as they can, roll it all up. That's like a man on steroids. Eventually it wears off. And as it starts to wear off, you acquire more. Right? So what do? You bulk up. You go buy the biggest competitor out there, anywhere, with the Century 21, the Coldwell Banker, and the Sotheby's. It's steroids. We'll see where we end up in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The antitrust issues, maybe they don't come into play in this administration and at this time, but we are moving to a menu of services. And one of my minor theses was residential agent commissions will approach zero. So let's get to the backdrop on that again. I talked about stock brokerage business. In the old days, in a stock brokerage business, commissions were wide. You'd pay, perhaps 25 cents a share to trade a share of stock. Orders were delivered by phone. They were written down at one end, maybe teletyped to the other end, maybe written down because you phoned in at the other end. There was a lot of labor. Well, as technology improved, and it was very basic at that point, right? The PC came into things, which meant that the various TCP/IP, the internet, right? The various layers. This was even before the internet, right? You had telephone, and data transfer. The pipes were still copper wire and hand laid and all of this, such that the minor increases in speed allowed things to become a little more efficient, the teletype and that. But it wasn't until we really clocked the internet and fiber being laid, really fiber and that sort of transformation, such that the speed, information at the speed of sound, the speed of light, I should say, that it allowed things to change even before algorithms, right? It allowed things to change such that commissions could come down. And why did they come down? Well, you didn't need 10 people. You didn't need someone answering the phone at one end. Hi, let me get you to your broker. Ding, ding. Broker picks up. Hi, Mrs. Smith. Yes, you'd like to sell 1,000 shares of IBM? Great, thank you. Click. Broker picks the phone back up, calls his trader. Hey, I've got 1,000 to go. Trader either phones it down to the floor, if it's a real large order, maybe teletypes it at this point. Gets to the other end, it's either picked up, let's say it's picked up by a runner, right? Someone writes it down or it comes off the machine, takes it out to the post. The specialist says to the specialist, hey, I need to buy 1,000. Get a price, great, thank you, I bought it. And then you do the whole process in reverse. A lot of people and time involved. Well, as technology became better, what we did with 10 people became 2 people, and commissions went from 25 cents a share really to zero now, and even some rebates. Variance around that, and it's not quite zero if you're getting research and other things, but just stick with the thesis. Labor is dismissed, technology is employed, spreads narrow, commissions go down. Well, let's talk about real estate brokerage. In California, at least in my market, 5% total commission for buyer and seller is typical. You see less than that on transactions, but just for argument's sake, let's say it's 5% and there's downward pressure when you've got people like Redfin offering to do their side for 1%. In other parts of the country, you still have 6%, but let's just stick in this range. Let's call it 5 to 6%. Consolidation in the brokerage business, a need to cut costs. Consumers have access to information. You can go to Zillow and 100 other sources and look at things. You're going to have a choice to go to Redfin Rocket, where they'll give you a discounted mortgage and closing fees, and their agent, who's typically not as experienced, they'll do the trade, let's say, for 1%. So instead of 2.5 aside, we've just removed 1.5, and now we're at 1%, the buy side of the transaction, and there's still 2.5 in it for the sell side, assuming that negotiation can come through and the buyer's willing to pay that or the seller's willing to pay that. And I know I'm not articulating this well, but just let's get back to the point, which is consumer has choice because of technology, can choose the Goldman Sachs, and I would have said Sotheby's before today, but you can choose the Sotheby's, the full price, or you can go to any number of brokerages like a Redfin that'll do it cheap. So commissions are coming down. So again, I predict that in the very near future, the vast majority of buy and sell transactions in residential real estate will be done for total commissions of 3% or less. That's down from 5 or 6. That's my prediction. I think the vast majority, the middle swath, will be in that range. Brokers hate to hear it. I don't like it. It's my income. I guarantee you Compass doesn't want to hear it either, but it's coming. And I think somewhere between 5 and 20% of transactions will get a much higher rate. Could be 5%, 6%, 8% if you demonstrate value, right? Real dollar value. And then within that range as well, you're going to have 5 to 20% that are just discount transactions. It's structural change in the marketplace. It's here. That just is what it is. So the argument previously had been a full service broker sells on service, right? Compass sells on service. Redfin sold on price. Good tagline, probably true, but if you were 2 years ago to have searched each Redfin and Compass's page and looked at service, you'd see Compass had something called Compass Concierge Service, which appeared prominently on their website. If you worked with Compass, their network of independent contractors, agents, brokers, professionals would do your landscaping, paint your house, do all the upgrades, right? You don't need to go anywhere else. It's a nice bundled service, right? But you're going to be buying from a menu. It went to the Redfin page, though. It was slanted more towards selling on price, but they offered many of the same services. They had their Redfin concierge service. No different. In the end, when we sit here today, September 22nd, 2025, as the Compass acquisition of Anywhere has been announced, I reiterate, technology, transparency, and AI win. And I refer you back to the Compass is just Redfin on steroids article. It didn't take a genius to write it. I just took what I observed after 25 years on Wall Street working with professionals, investment bankers, hedge funds, mutual fund professionals, people that were structuring deals, buying and selling deals for these companies. The similarities process, while there are variances, it's so much the same I can't begin to explain. So it's happening to real estate now. It's just happening. The menu of services, you will pick and choose what you want and you will pay accordingly. You might pay a flat fee for a service. You might pay a commission for a service. You might buy one piece from one entity, one piece from another company. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, but I believe in it wholeheartedly. I'd also argue that the roll-up strategy that Compass is employing, they know this. They need margin. They need scale. They understand the world is changing. They need the high-end Goldman Sachs, and they need the low-end E-Trade or Robinhood. That's just it, plain and simple. So here, September 22nd, 2025, we sit wondering, will the acquisition be approved by shareholders? I haven't seen the full release yet. 2, will there be any antitrust questions? 3, how will industry participants react? Right? Will there be pushback from other players to the point where there are lawsuits and the like? Will you have agents saying to any significant degree, I don't want to work for this roll-up. I'm going somewhere else? How will consumers react? And how long will it take for consumers to grasp what's happening? I submit that the value of the boutique brokerage house like Native Angelino Real Estate, my brokerage, will be in greater demand as people don't want to feel like a number. You don't want to feel like you're walking onto a used car lot. You don't want to feel like you're walking into the Ferrari dealership either and being sold. You want to feel that you're walking into your person's office or you're having lunch, dinner, taking a walk in the park, whatever it is, and this person is taking care of you, understands your needs, will protect your privacy, will get things done in an efficient manner, and make you the most money possible. Integrity, ethics, skills. That's a boutique brokerage. That's what we offer here. And as I mentioned before, I think the agency overall does a great job, and there are plenty of others in local markets, but for brand names, they do a good job as well. Anyway, I'm going to sign off now, I think, and would be very interested in following up with comments. open to have discussions whenever you want. You can find me at Native Angelino Real Estate on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram. My website is nativeangelino.com. And of course, you'll see my phone number posted around. It's the 213 number, and you should feel free to reach out to me at any point. Thanks again.